The night split open with hunger's roar, and the savannah trembled beneath the storm. Lightning carved jagged scars across the sky, and the air carried the scent of blood yet to spill. Claire's breath quickened, her ribs sharp under skin stretched too thin. She darted forward, muscles burning, eyes locked on a gazelle fleeing into the dark. Hunger clawed at her belly, sharper than any predator's teeth. Her cub's cries echoed in her mind, forcing her legs to drive faster. Samuel whispered, "Run, mother, run, or we all starve." The earth shook with hooves, scattering dust into the storm wind. Claire lunged, claws slicing through empty space as prey vanished like a ghost. Pain surged through her chest, the storm mocking her broken strike. Lightning flashed, showing her ribs, her trembling frame, her exhaustion. Hunger had won the race again tonight. She fell into shadow, chest heaving, eyes fierce. Nature spoke in silence, reminding her that mercy never walks here. The savannah lay drenched in storm silence, broken only by Claire's ragged breaths. Hunger twisted inside her, deeper than pain. Samuel pressed against her, his body trembling. She whispered, "We are still here, but the night has stolen our strength." Lightning flickered, shadows stretching into monsters. Her eyes scanned the darkness, but no prey lingered near. Every failed hunt left her weaker, every breath more costly. She licked Samuel's head, a gesture of comfort she did not feel. His small stomach growled in reply. The storm moved onward, but its scars remained etched in the ground and in her body. Hunger lingered, patient, cruel, eternal. The storm rolled away, leaving behind a hollow silence that pressed on Claire's chest. She stood still, listening to the grass shift in the breeze. Samuel's eyes followed hers, wide with questions too heavy to ask. Hunger made her bones ache, but she moved forward, cautious. The night carried danger in every whisper. A hyena's laugh rose in the distance, mocking her weakness. She growled softly, warning Samuel to stay close. Lightning was gone now, but its ghost lingered in the sky, painted in bruised clouds. She knew the night still had teeth, and they would find her soon. The grass swayed, and Claire froze, her ears tilting forward. Eyes glowed faintly in the darkness ahead, gazelles, cautious, hidden. She lowered her body into the mud, her muscles screaming with hunger. Samuel whispered through a whimper, "Do you see them?" She pressed her paw gently against him, silencing his sound. The herd shifted nervously, aware of danger yet unaware of how close it stood. Her heart thudded, not with hope but with desperation. She knew her body had little left to give, yet hunger would not allow stillness. The law of survival pushed her forward once more. The herd's ears flicked, hooves shifting uneasily, yet they did not scatter. Claire's eyes narrowed, every muscle trembling under her spotted coat. She lunged a step, but her body betrayed her, legs faltering. Hunger weighed heavier than instinct, dragging her back. Samuel's soft cry broke the silence, piercing the night. The gazelles bolted instantly, their bodies vanishing into tall grass. Dust and rain lingered in their wake, taunting her defeat. She fell back into shadow, chest burning, eyes hollow. Hunger had stolen another chance, and the night carried her weakness like a cruel secret. Claire woke to the hush after thunder, her body aching where the storm had pressed its weight. The grass steamed under a thin dawn, and silence felt like a fragile shell. Samuel nudged her, small and warm, and hope flickered. Claire said, "Breathe steady, little flame, the day is long." A lone hornbill called, its note thin as wire pulled tight. Hunger waited nearby like a crouched shadow, patient and sure. Claire licked the mud from Samuel's face and tasted the bitter night. Samuel whispered, "Will the light help us?" Claire said, "Light shows paths, not promises." She rose slowly, measuring each tendon's complaint, and tested the wind. Far off, hooves stitched patterns she could not follow yet. The air held wet clay, wild sage, and the memory of lightning. Claire lowered her head and listened for answers older than fear. The answers spoke in grass, and the grass said moo. Claire led Samuel along a game trail that stitched through thorn and bloom. The ground sucked at their paws, slick with last night's fury. She paused where wind curled inward, holding the scent of shelter. Samuel said, "Is this where we rest?" Claire said, "We learn first, then rest." She sank into the grass and traced a patient circle around a scrub hare's burrow. The lesson was not meat but stillness and timing. Her ribs rose like bars and fell like prayers, yet her eyes stayed bright. A cloud crossed the sun, dimming the world to a soft bruise. Samuel mirrored her posture, clumsy but fierce with attention. Claire whispered, "Wait until the world forgets we are here." A beetle ticked over a leaf like a metronome counting chances. The burrow held, the wind shifted, the trail of heat thinned. Claire stood, lesson tucked beneath the skin of morning. Vultures drifted above like slow knives, tracing circles over a scent Claire could not ignore. The air carried iron and rot, a promise laced with risk. Samuel pressed closer, his breath skipping against her flank. Claire said, "Food is food, but danger owns the wrapper." She approached the slope where acacia thorns ruled the hill. The carcass lay half buried in shadow, marked by older teeth. A laugh rose from the scrub, thin and clever, and slid away. Samuel said, "Who waits there?" Claire said, "Someone who counts our steps." She measured the light and the angles, and the exits if exits were needed. The vultures folded and opened, wings whispering the cost of misjudgment. Hunger tightened the circle inside her, steady and cold. She stepped back, choosing hunger over a trap she could not pay for. The sky closed its knives and moved on. The day thinned into a white glare that hid edges and made distance lie. Claire followed a seam of green where water sometimes remembered its path. Reed frogs clicked like beads, stitching a rhythm for patience. Samuel said, "I feel the ground hum." Claire said, "Hold the hum, it guides feet." She scanned for reedbuck, for warthog, for anything that bled and moved. A shape paused in the far shimmer, then broke apart into heat. The wind turned traitor and carried their scent into waiting ears. Claire sank lower, letting the reeds write camouflage across her spine. Samuel copied the script and held his breath like treasure. A dragonfly stitched blue thread through the air, unbothered by hunger. Claire said, "When the wind lies, we rewrite the plan." They rewrote with silence, and the silence held. Shadows lengthened, softening the world to a story worth believing. Claire climbed a termite mound where wind told the truth. Samuel scrambled after and settled against her heartbeat. Claire said, "We carry the day, even when it carries nothing for us." Far off, a herd lifted its heads and lowered them again, undecided. The sky bruised into purple, and one star pricked the skin of dusk. Samuel said, "Do we try again tonight?" Claire said, "We try until trying becomes sleep." The mound held the day's warmth like a gift kept close. Bats unstitched the light with quiet wings. Hunger watched from the grass, but it did not speak. Claire filled her chest with night and let it out as resolve. The dark answered with space to run. Night had folded itself into silence when the laugh of Marcus, male hyena, split the air. His shadow trailed the scent of weakness, his eyes carrying the hunger of a rival who waited at the edge. Claire froze, her ribs trembling, her ears sharpened toward the sound. Samuel pressed close, his body humming with fear. Claire said, "Stay near, my flame, for shadows hunt as well as storms." Marcus circled, his paws sinking into damp soil, his laughter thin and cruel. Hunger was not his alone, but his presence was a blade pressed close. Claire growled low, a sound meant to shield Samuel with threat. Samuel whispered, "Will he take us?" Claire said, "Only if fear lets him." The savannah shifted under weight, neither storm nor sun could scatter. The night carried two hungers now, one desperate, one patient. Their eyes locked in silence, each step a question of who would fall first. The storm's ghost returned with a crack of lightning, ripping open the night. Hooves exploded into motion, gazelles scattering like sparks into the dark. Claire surged forward, her body driving against the weight of exhaustion. Samuel cried, "Catch them, mother, catch them!" Her stride stretched, her claws gripped mud, her breath tore from her chest. The herd fractured into streaks of tan and white, their rhythm frantic under the crack of thunder. Lightning burned her reflection into every puddle she crossed. Hunger screamed louder than the sky, forcing her toward prey she could almost taste. Yet her muscles faltered, her stride shortening, her speed stolen by the weight of many nights unfed. The earth blurred, the storm pulled at her lungs. Each step became heavier, sharper, crueler. Her claws swiped empty air once more. The gazelles vanished into rain and shadow, and her failure cut deeper than the storm. The chase ended with silence, broken only by Claire's heaving chest. She lay low in the grass, her body trembling, every muscle spent. Samuel pressed against her, his eyes wide, his small body shuddering. Claire said, "Not tonight," but still we breathed. The night smelled of wet soil and lightning's ash. The sky still flickered with distant fire, but the prey had vanished like ghosts. Samuel whispered, "Does hunger always win?" Claire closed her eyes, forcing air into her lungs, her claws sinking into the earth. She said, "Hunger wins until we steal a piece back." The grass hissed with whispers, insects carrying the sound of emptiness. The chase had stripped her, but the will still remained. Samuel's stomach growled, and the sound hollowed her heart. Claire lifted her head, her gaze fierce despite her body's weakness. The world gave nothing freely, and every breath had to be stolen. Samuel's cries broke into the night, soft at first, then sharp, pulling at every shadow. His hunger carved sound into the air, and predators would hear it. Claire lowered her head and hushed him, her tongue brushing his face. She whispered, "Quiet, or the night will eat us whole." His body shook, his belly hollow, his eyes begging for what she could not give. The wind shifted, carrying the stench of lions in the far distance. Claire's ears flicked, her heart pounding in rhythm with Samuel's whimpers. Hunger no longer felt like an emptiness but a threat, loud enough to betray them. Samuel whispered, "I can't stop. It hurts." Claire pressed her body against his, her warmth, the only offering. She closed her eyes and listened as silence returned, broken only by breath. The savannah held its teeth around them, and the night waited for the smallest mistake. The weight of the day broke inside her bones, and Claire's body sagged into the earth. She lay trembling, her chest rising in broken rhythm, her tail twitching weakly. Samuel pressed against her side, his tiny body pulsing with warmth she could barely feel. Claire whispered, "The night is long, but it does not own us yet." The wind combed through the grass, bringing whispers of prey too far, too safe. The sky leaned heavy with stars, watching without mercy. Hunger felt endless, its grip colder than rain and sharper than claws. She closed her eyes, forcing her heart to stay steady. Samuel murmured, "Will we wake again?" Claire opened her eyes, fierce despite her weakness. She said, "We will wake because we must." The silence stretched like a blade across the savannah, sharp, waiting. The earth beneath her pulsed with the law of survival: endure or be forgotten. Dawn bled into the storm's bruise, and the grass held its breath for a verdict. Claire traced the ridge where thunder had carved a path, reading silence like a map. Samuel padded close, small as a heartbeat hiding in a fist. A hyena shape wavered ahead, not Marcus, but someone who shared his scent. Claire slowed, weighing the law of need against the risk of meeting teeth. Samuel whispered, "Is danger waiting?" Claire said, "Danger is always early." The shape dipped, then rose, and a second scent spilled from the grass, warm and milky. Not a trap, a family, a hunger folded into a hunger. Claire steadied her breath and set Samuel behind her ribs of shadow. She said, "We walk wide and we walk quiet." Wind pushed their scent sideways, kind for one thin minute. The day stretched thin as glass, and truth gleamed through it. Survival wore two faces, and both were tired. Nadine lifted her head, and the air thickened with decisions that cut both ways. Claire felt the pull to claim meat, any meat, and the pull to leave this thread unbroken. Samuel pressed against her foreleg, listening for words beyond words. Nadine stepped sideways, not forward, drawing a crescent of distance around small lives. Claire said, "We do not waste breath on battles that cost more than they pay." Samuel nodded, and the nod felt older than he was. A vulture dropped a shadow like a coin onto the scene. Both hunters glanced up, then down, counting the same debts. Nadine's jaw worked, slow with ache, but steady with will. Samuel whispered, "She is like us." Claire said, "The grass tells one story in many voices." Wind stitched quiet across the space, and the space held. The moment passed without teeth, and that counted as food for the spirit. Clouds thickened into iron, and a hush rolled in that tasted of mud not yet born. The first drops tapped leaves like scouts. Claire felt the ground lift and swell underfoot. The dry gully below them took a breath, then another, and became a throat. Samuel said, "The earth is moving." Claire said, "It is remembering water." A wall of brown glass rounded the bend, swallowing reeds and ants and secrets. Nadine barked short, snapping pups to her flanks. Claire lunged upslope, pushing Samuel ahead, claws biting clay that turned to grease. The flood slammed the gully and climbed for their ankles, then knees in a blink. Branches shot past like knives wrapped in leaves. Claire hauled Samuel higher, ribs burning, eyes fixed on a thorn tree that did not care. The roar ate the horizon and left only decisions. They chose height, and height chose them back. They hit the thorn tree's shoulder, a ledge stitched with roots and stone. Water punched the slope below, tearing yesterday from the soil. Samuel shook, eyes bright with fear and light. Claire pressed against him, steadying breath into a rhythm he could borrow. Across the rush, Nadine braced, pups wedged under her chest like warm stones. A log slammed the trunk and spun away, and everyone flinched and held. Claire said, "We wait until the river forgets our names." Samuel nodded, and the nod steadied his legs. Nadine met Claire's gaze. A bridge built of need, not friendship. The roar thinned by degrees until sound opened a doorway. Warm rain softened to a hush that dust could understand. Claire tested the earth with one careful step. The ledge held, and the promise of descent took shape inside breath. By late day, the flood sagged back into the gully like a beast that had eaten too much. The air smelled of torn grass and raw stone, of beginnings disguised as endings. Claire led Samuel down the slope in a slow, exact line. Nadine moved parallel, keeping the river between their debts. Samuel said, "We are still here." Claire said, "Being here is the first victory." Carcasses of reeds braided the bank, a script of what almost was. The sky opened into gold, not kind, not cruel, only clear. Nadine paused, checked the pups, and angled away into thorn and dusk. Claire watched her go and felt a thread tie two hungers into one story. Samuel pressed his head against her leg and breathed steady. The day exhaled, and the savannah took back its shape. Night waited ahead with new questions, and they would answer them running. The sun fell low, bleeding fire across the savannah, and the air thickened with tension. Claire's eyes narrowed as she traced the herd ahead, each gazelle restless in golden light. Samuel whispered, "They are close enough now." Claire said, "Close enough to risk." Every muscle in her body coiled, her ribs sharp against skin, but her spirit sharp against fate. Hunger throbbed like a drum inside her chest, louder than wind, louder than memory. A young gazelle strayed from its herd, ears flicking, hooves uncertain. Claire's breath steadied, her claws sank into the earth, and the world tightened to a single heartbeat. Samuel pressed lower into the grass, silent, holding his breath as if he too were hunting. The savannah tilted, every sound fading into stillness. Claire whispered, "Now or never." and the air snapped with her decision. She burst from shadow, golden lightning in flesh, chasing life to deny death. The chase erupted with fury, grass bending beneath hooves and claws. Claire's body stretched into its full design, every stride longer than breath. Dust exploded under her paws, her tail slicing balance into air. Samuel whispered into the wind, "Run, mother, run." The gazelle bolted, twisting sharp angles, desperate for escape. Lightning cracked inside Claire's veins, burning muscle and bone. The herd scattered wide, but her eyes clung to the one that faltered. Hunger sharpened the world into edges, and each edge drove her faster. Her claws slashed soil, her lungs flamed, her heart galloped harder than prey. The gazelle's fear was a rhythm, its hooves pounding like war drums. Claire's body screamed but did not break. The savannah roared, a battlefield of speed and survival. Each breath was a vow. Tonight she would not fall empty. Tonight, hunger would be forced to yield. The gazelle veered sharply, hooves tearing earth. But Claire matched the angle with brutal precision. Her claws reached for flesh, slicing wind, missing by inches. She snarled, her breath ragged, her ribs threatening collapse. Samuel's heart thudded in his throat as he watched from cover, eyes wide. Claire drove harder, every muscle crying for relief, but instinct denied mercy. Hunger painted fire across her bones, demanding victory. The gazelle stumbled for half a step, its strength slipping like sand. Claire lunged, eyes blazing, mouth open in promise. The air split, dust spun into spirals, the chase narrowed into inches. Time fractured into shards of motion and silence. The gazelle leapt again, desperate, but its stumble had cost too much. Claire's claws brushed hide, and survival answered with contact. In that moment, the savannah froze, suspended on the edge of life and loss. The final clash cracked like thunder. Claire's claws struck hide, tearing flesh, blood misting in air. The gazelle screamed, legs flailing, earth trembling with impact. Claire bore down, her teeth slicing through struggle, her body locking prey into silence. Samuel cried, "You have it, mother, you have it." Dust swirled, mixing with the copper scent of blood. Hunger roared its triumph inside her chest, a savage drum of survival. The gazelle's fight ebbed, its body jerking weaker, until stillness claimed it. Claire's eyes burned with exhaustion, her sides heaving, yet her jaws held victory tight. The savannah held its breath, as if bowing to the cost of this conquest. Her claws trembled, not with weakness, but with release. Samuel crept closer, awe shaping his gaze. Claire whispered, "This is the price, and this is the gift." The silence after the kill was louder than the storm before it. The gazelle lay still, its life returned to the savannah. Claire stood over it, chest heaving, her body scarred with exhaustion. Samuel pressed against her, eyes wide, hunger and awe mixing like fire and rain. Claire whispered, "Eat my flame, for tomorrow will not wait." Samuel bent, his teeth clumsy, but his hunger sharper than skill. Blood stained his muzzle, life feeding life in the oldest pact. Claire watched, her body sagging, her eyes steady, carrying both relief and sorrow. The stars began to bloom overhead, silent witnesses to the struggle. The herd had vanished, but echoes of their flight lingered in dust. Samuel said, "We will wake stronger." Claire whispered, "Stronger until the next chase, and the next after that." The savannah exhaled, holding their secret within its endless breath. Hunger was quiet now, but only for this fleeting, fragile night. Dawn unstitched the night and revealed quiet bones of grass. Claire stood over the kill, breath slow, body trembling with spent fire. Samuel fed in small, determined bites, learning the language of survival. Claire said, "Eat until the world looks steady again." Wind slid over the plain, carrying the faint memory of thunder. The herd was gone, leaving only hoof marks and silence. Jackals watched from the rim of distance, weighing cost against risk. Samuel lifted his head, eyes bright, and whispered, "It tastes like running." Claire closed her eyes, and let the truth settle. Hunger had stepped back, but only to wait its turn. The sun climbed, warm on her scarred flanks, and the earth smelled new. She said, "We pay and we live, and the grass writes our receipt." The day opened like a door, and they walked through it with meat and breath. Flies rose in a glittering cloud, and settled again like ash. Claire dragged the carcass toward shade, each pull measured and exact. Samuel stumbled, then matched her rhythm, small body learning weight and will. Claire said, "We hide our breath from those who hunt by scent." Vultures wheeled wider, counting seconds instead of mercy. The heat thickened and pressed on their lungs. A shadow crossed the ground, and Claire paused until it passed. Samuel said, "The sky watches us." Claire answered, "Everything watches, and everything remembers." They reached the thorn shade where wind wrote cooler lines. She tucked the kill into scrub and wiped blood from her muzzle. The world steadied, though it did not soften. She breathed, slow and deep, and let hunger's echo fade to a low hum. Nadine appeared at the edge of scrub, thin and steady, her eyes like stones that had seen fire. She kept distance, the river of yesterday still talking between them. Samuel stiffened, but Claire only watched and breathed. Nadine glanced at the sky and then at the grass that hid her pups. Claire said, "Today holds enough for all who pay the fee." Wind carried the scent of bones and rain and small lives. Nadine turned away, choosing her path without stealing theirs. Samuel whispered, "Why did she leave?" Claire said, "Because need is a mirror, and today it showed her home." Silence fell clean, like water clearing silt. The scrub settled, and flies drew halos above the meat. Balance returned on quiet feet and stood with them a while. Heat thinned into gold, and breath came easier beneath long shadows. Claire licked Samuel's face, cleaning the story that blood had written. He butted her shoulder and laughed in a sound too small for grief. Claire said, "Remember the wind, the angles and the silence that winds hunts." Grass swayed like a tide that did not care for kings. Distant thunder muttered in the bones of cloud, promising later trials. Samuel practiced a stalk on a locust, shoulders rolling in tiny waves. Claire watched, tired and full, and felt the old lessons pulse. She said, "We hold this hour and let it hold us back." The sun bent low, tender and exact, touching every scar it could find. The day gave them stillness without promises, and that was enough. Night gathered without malice, and laid a cool hand on the plain. Stars pricked the sky like witnesses with long memories. Claire rested on a low mound, ribs rising slow, eyes open to the dark. Samuel curled into her warmth and sighed, bone-tired and safe. Claire said, "The law does not change, and we do not ask it to." A breeze carried lion musk from far away, a warning folded in silk. She counted paths out of habit, then let the counting go. Samuel murmured, "Will hunger find us again?" Claire answered, "When it does, we will be ready." The mound held their weight and the day's price. Somewhere, water moved quietly back into the earth. The night closed its book around them, and nothing promised mercy, only time. Night folded across the savannah, and silence weighed more than thunder. Samuel lifted his head from Claire's side, his muzzle still dark with the day's hunt. His eyes glowed, not with fear, but with something sharper. Claire whispered, "You have eaten, and now you carry fire inside." The cub stared outward, watching the horizon breathe under starlight. Hunger had been chased away for now, but its shadow lingered in every rustle of grass. The sky bent heavy with stars, each one a reminder that life burned briefly. Samuel's gaze held the dark fierce in its smallness. The herd had vanished hours ago, but their absence pressed against the air like ghosts. Samuel pressed closer to Claire's flank. Her heart beat a steady drum of endurance. He whispered, "It is quiet now." Claire answered, "Quiet carries teeth of its own." The savannah stretched wide and endless, shadows bending with the wind. Stars shifted above, slow as old scars healing. Claire closed her eyes for a breath, but sleep never claimed her. The world did not soften, it only paused. The sky bloomed with scattered light, and the silence deepened into a roar that only the heart could hear. Claire lifted her head, her breath thin, eyes scanning the dark as if reading old stories etched into stars. Samuel whispered, "Do they watch us?" She answered, "They remember us." The cub rested again, but his eyes stayed open, reflecting constellations. The world was vast and cold, yet in that stillness lay the heat of survival. Claire's shadow stretched across the mound, thin but unbroken. She rose slow, each muscle carved with fatigue, and scanned the plain. Hunger was gone for tonight, yet its ghost clung like mist. Samuel stirred and whispered, "Will we run again tomorrow?" Claire answered, "We run until running is gone." The stars did not blink, they only burned steady, watching as guardians and judges both. The savannah breathed, indifferent yet eternal. The savannah fell silent, as if holding one last breath. Claire lowered her head, eyes fierce, her body trembling with survival's weight. Samuel watched, his face still marked with blood and dust, his silence an echo of the law written into the grass. Claire whispered, "Hunger will return, but so will we." The wind carried no reply, only endless truth. The stars above did not fade. They carved memory into the night. And the final sound was silence, sharper than teeth, lasting longer than life.